twist now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can use
Jesus,
twist.
you're still-
Yeah.
I gotta keep track of what I'm doing.
Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Lower Providence Township Board of Supervisors for Thursday, February 5th, 2015. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Deb. Will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Mr. Sergini.
Here.
Mr. Duffy.
Here.
Ms. Ekman.
Here.
Mr. Thomas. Ms. Zimmerman.
Here.
Thank you, Deb. Prior to the meeting this evening, an executive session was held to discuss legal and personnel matters, and also as a point of clarification, an exec session was held prior to the meeting on January 15th. The first item on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. It includes consideration to approve minutes and accept all reports and other agency minutes, and approval of fiscal matters. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion, second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any comments from the board? Comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. At this time, the next item on our agenda is a public hearing. At this time, I will ask the board for a motion to temporarily adjourn the public meeting and enter into a public hearing. Do I hear a motion?
Make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? Comments or questions from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. We are now in a public hearing to consider two items. Mr. Rice, shall we just take one at a time?
Yes.
Okay. First item in the public hearing is a consideration of an ordinance recognizing the authority of fire companies and emergency responders to seek reimbursement for hazardous abatement incidents, environmental incidents, and fire safety and rescue responses, and authorizing such emergency service providers to seek reimbursement from third-party billing services and/or insurance companies. Mr. Rice.
Okay. This ordinance, just by way of background, the ordinance has been advertised for public hearing tonight in the January 16th and January 23rd editions of the Times Herald. The ordinance was also lodged with the Montgomery County Law Library on January 12th. This is an ordinance which the emergency service providers of the township requested that the township consider. It's an ordinance that's authorized under the second-class township code, and basically authorizes fire departments, EMS, and the township itself to recover costs that they incur in emergency rescue, fire safety types of incidences from third-party billing services and insurance carriers. So there is nothing currently that authorizes fire departments and EMS to seek this reimbursement. This is an ordinance which many municipalities have been utilizing to have the ability to do this. It's up for adoption tonight and for any public comment. I don't know if the board has any questions about this. We've been batting this around for a few months, and we've been, gotten input from the fire company representatives on the content, and it is ready for board action.
I just have one, Mr. Rice, just a point of clarification in Article 3, Section B, where it discusses the aforementioned cost being applicable to insurance companies and carriers. Just to reiterate that the only applicable parties involved are insurance carriers, not billable to individual residents.
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Even on the right page. How can you follow?
I just have
You
just
already
one.
read it. I guess, additional thing that would be by way of background. So, Chairman Sorgini and I visited the fire company last year. This came out of that meeting where we attended this request. I want to remind the residents that our fire company is still completely 100% volunteer. They, solicit their own donations and have their annual fireman's fair is how they basically keep the place afloat. The township's funding is a $100,000 donation yearly, and then the State Firemen's Relief Association contributes $200,000. So that's a very small portion of their annual budget, and this ability for them to bill for calls that they go on and they incur expenses will significantly help them with their expenses. So I just want to add that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to the second item under our public hearing, the consideration of an ordinance authorizing the participation of Lower Providence Township in the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, also known as PSATs, Unemployment Compensation Group Trust pursuant to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Law. Mr. Rice.
Okay. Much like the prior ordinance, this one was also advertised tonight in the January 16th, January 23rd editions of the Times Herald. It was lodged at the Montgomery County Law Library on January 14th. This is an ordinance which authorizes the township to continue to participate in essentially a group trust for its unemployment compensation. This is a continuation, and I know Jerry Golis will probably be able to address some of the details better than I, but this is a continuation of the existing relationship that the township has with the PSATs Unemployment Compensation Group Trust. It's a pooled insurance trust which is authorized under the Intergovernmental Cooperation Act, and I believe there's been some changes this past year in I guess in the structure to some extent, but Jerry, if you can just go through that.
Sure. Well, as a little background, the township entered an agreement, but not a formal agreement. We had an election to participate form back in 1982. That's how long we've been with the PSATs Unemployment Insurance Trust. They have formalized the agreements for all municipalities, so there's a standard one. So the trust itself adopted this agreement in July of 2014 to clarify some of their governance issues and procedures that they've had in place over the years. Doubtful that we would even be able to locate this election to participate form that's 30 years old, but this agreement that they adopted requires all of their members to adopt an ordinance authorizing participation in the trust per the intergovernmental cooperation law. So that's one thing. They have increased the number of trustees from the trust from 3 to 5, and they've also they also now require that all trustees be in positions of authority in their municipality. So you couldn't just have a general clerk in there. They would want a supervisor or a manager, assistant manager, perhaps a finance director. So they're not major changes, but they're definitely have a formal agreement now that all members will sign and adopt. I do want to point out that they have not changed in any way their methods or factors used in calculating the unemployment rates. That hasn't changed. It's just their governance issues.
So what's in front of the board is the ordinance which then adopts the amended and restated declaration and agreement of trust for the PSATs Unemployment Compensation Group Trust. And it's ready for action by the board. If the board has any questions for Jerry?
Any questions from the board? Comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, I would like to call for a motion to adjourn the public hearing and re-enter into the public meeting. Do I have a motion? We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any questions? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We have now re-entered the public meeting. Mr. Rice, you are on for item 3A, consideration of an ordinance recognizing the authority of fire companies and emergency responders to seek reimbursement for hazardous abatement incidents, environmental incidents, and fire safety and rescue responses, and authorizing such emergency service providers to seek reimbursement from third-party billing services and/or insurance companies.
I have nothing else to add.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rice. Okay, all right. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance regarding the reimbursement?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the reimbursement ordinance for the fire companies.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I would second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Any comments or questions from the audience? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3B, consideration of an ordinance authorizing the participation of Lower Providence Township in the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, PSATs, Unemployment Compensation Group Trust pursuant to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Law. Ms. Golis, anything to add?
Now, just reiterate, if I can follow Mr. Rice, the ordinance has been advertised, the public hearing has been held and concluded, and this ordinance is now ready for board action for a vote. So
Excellent.
if the board would please approve this ordinance and for the township to continue participation in the PSATS Unemployment Insurance Trust.
Thank you very much. Do I hear a motion to allow Lower Providence to continue in the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, PSATs Trust? We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Continuing on with new business, item 4A, authorization to prepare and advertise 2015 road work bids. Mr. Primus and Mr. Woodrow.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The township manager has asked us to start getting the 2015 milling and paving bid package together so we can take advantage of the low oil prices. So I'm asking the board to approve township staff and engineer to get that package together. And I'm also asking the board to approve us to advertise it when the bid package is ready to go out.
Thank you, Mr. Primus. It looks like we have 4 roads scheduled. If I'm correct, Eagle Stream Drive, Collegeville Road from Township Line Road to River Road, Sunnyside Avenue from Farmhouse Road to 5th Street, and finally Woodland Avenue from Miami Avenue to Trooper Road. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. Looks like everything is in order.
And Rich, we already borrowed the money or have the funding in place for the paving this year, correct? We did that last year?
That is correct. When we took out our loan last year, we included this year's paving costs, and it's at that $571,000 is all part of last year's loan. And with oil anywhere from $45 a barrel to $50 a barrel, now is an excellent time to seek a bid for road repaving.
Does it make sense to add in another road then?
If we get some really good bids, it may very well.
Mr. Primus, do we happen to know what that fifth road might be?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, actually,
I don't have the
you do.
list. I do?
Well, yeah, you've got a number of roads to pick from
the-
the 2016
Correct.
Yeah.
items. Yeah, you've
We
got
have
that.
roads picked, I just don't have the names
Okay,
in front of
okay.
me.
If you could just go back and take a look, and if
Sure.
if things look favorable, then we can consider a fifth road.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, do I hear a motion to authorize the township to prepare and advertise the 2015 road work bid?
Make that motion.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4B, discussion and consideration of changes to pension investment strategy allocation. Ms. Golish, you are on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last time the board took action on the allocation of the assets for our pension funds was in 2002. You have a copy of that resolution in your packet. During the January meeting of the Township's Pension Committee, our new pension advisory firm, INR Services, made a recommendation that we adjust the allocation for the investment of our funds. Currently, it's set by resolution for equities at 50 to 60%, fixed income 38 to 48%, and cash at 0 to 10%. They're recommending that equities go to 65% plus or minus 10% either way, fixed income 32% plus or minus 10% either way, and cash at 3% plus or minus 5%. After INR has been on board for a number of months now as our new pension advisory services firm, this isn't something they just brought up at that meeting, and they've been reviewing our policies, our actuarial valuations with our assumptions of 8% for the two pension plans and 5% for the health and welfare plan, for the post-retirement benefits. And they're recommending these changes in the allocation so that we can ideally have a better chance of meeting these assumptions. As I mentioned here in the memo, we do have Mr. Jeff Hugo of INR Advisory Services here tonight, as well as Mr. Mike Glacken. So they're both prepared to present this in a little more detail and to field any questions that the board or the public may have. If you would like, either or both can come to the podium.
That would be great, thank you.
Gentlemen.
Good evening, I'm Mike Glacken from INR Advisors. Thank you for the opportunity. In that pension committee meeting, our ultimate goal and job is to meet your assumed interest rate that you're using in your actuarial valuation over time. As Jerry mentioned, in the two pensions, you're using an 8% assumed interest rate. Our research is showing that using the limiting to 60% allocation, the likelihood of meeting that 8% assumed interest rate is much lower than using the 65% allocation towards stocks. 90% of your return can be attributed to that allocation strategy, how much goes to stocks versus bonds. And right now, the GASB accounting standards are requiring municipalities to justify the allocation that they're going to use based on the assumed interest rate that your actuary is going to use. So in that manner, when you take a look at our research, using the 60% equity allocation and 40% fixed income, the expected return over the long run is roughly 7.3%, versus you're moving the allocation strategy up to 65% equities, 35% fixed income. You're getting closer to your assumed interest rate of roughly 7.73% is what our current numbers are showing. And that's much closer to the guidelines that GASB would accept for you using an 8% assumed interest rate. If not, what could be a likely outcome is your actuary could come back. Well, the purview of the actuary is to use an assumed interest rate that he believes you can obtain over time. By using the 65% equity mix within the ranges, it gives us the leeway to use our research to obtain that assumed interest rate over time.
Very good. Any questions from the board? It's a very thorough report. Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Glacken.
Thank you.
I will call for a motion.
I would make the motion. I would make a motion to consider the changes of the pension allocation as recommended by INR Investments.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the board?
I was just going to add the comment that it was also approved by the pension committee by vote, right?
Correct,
That they're
absolutely.
recommending the same.
And one item I did want to add, and please jump back in, but in addition to having to justify the assumption that we're using on that our actuary uses and that he completes in cooperation with the township, the GASB rule changes are going to be reflected in our financial audits. So now we'll have footnotes on the pension plan, so that it's not going to be separate valuations and then separate financial audits for the township. They'll all tie in, and we wouldn't want a finding for having unrealistic assumptions based on our investment allocation. It's another reason for doing this.
Thank you. I think it should also be noted that Mr. Glacken and Mr. Hugo in the previous meeting addressed how they would handle an issue such as happened in 2008, 2009, and the strategies that they have involved with that as well. And seems to be a fiscally sound policy. So thank you for that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4C, discussion and consideration of request to waive fence requirements at 101 South Midland Avenue. Mr. Mrzinski, you're up.
Thank you. Resident Marla Shipe, who has a property at the corner of South Midland and 3rd, has approached the township to install a fence in what is the yard that is adjoining 3rd. Because it's a corner property, it's a front yard, just as even though the house faces Midland, so she has 2 front yards. Because of Chapter 81, the fence ordinance doesn't allow solid fencing in the front yard of the property. Mrs. Shipe, is asking for a waiver to allow for a solid fence to enclose an existing patio area that's along that side, to give her some privacy and to give her neighbors some privacy. The fences would be designed to meet up with her adjoining neighbors on going north on Midland, and I guess that would be west on 3rd. I believe that she's in the audience and can give us some more details if that's what you'd like.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. Good
Marla
evening.
DeChico Shipe, thank you for listening. So I just purchased this home a little less than a year ago, and I'm in desperate need of a fence because I have 2 dogs and a young child. I made this diagram so you could basically kind of get a sense of it. So I have the sidewalks are here. So this is the front of my house. I have, thank you. Oh, perfect. So basically, the type of fence that I wanted, or I was hoping for, I think you have a copy of it as well.
We do.
Okay, so it's like a scoop fence. Unfortunately, with the spacing that I wanted and the height that I wanted, it wasn't up to par with the guidelines. Basically, I like that scoop design. The spacing I wanted to be 1 inch. I can't really afford the privacy, but the 1 inch I thought would be better for my dogs and for a little bit of privacy on the corner. But I was asking for a 6 foot. Basically, the 6 foot's at the top, only because I was told this isn't the actual company that's doing the fence, but I was told that the scoop could go down to about 5'4". And the only reason I wanted it that high, I didn't want, if I did the 5 foot at the top, then I'd be down to 4'4". My one dog can jump a 4 foot fence, and that concerns me. Also, My one neighbor has a chain link fence, and it's 5 foot, and I did want to cover that on my one side. So if I go 5 foot here, then the scoop's going to show the chain link, and I just wanted it to look a little nicer. If you look at the next picture with the house, can you zoom out a little bit? Basically on the sides of my house, it's going to be a little bit, probably about a foot back from the actual front wall. So it'll be on this side and then back to my one neighbor's, and then on this side, meeting up to the chain link and then back. So again, function, it's for my dogs, hopefully. They're a very active, protective breed. I want to make sure, obviously for anyone passing by that it's safe, but also just so that, they could be out, also my child. The next picture shows the patio. So this was the front of the house over here that I was just mentioning. So it would go basically here and then back down, meeting up to my other neighbor's fence. When I sit out or at least I tried to sit out here a couple times last summer, the next photo shows that my neighbors across the street, across the way, there are big picture windows right there, and there's no curtains, and it's just awkward when I'm sitting or doing anything on the patio. So that's why I was hoping for a little bit of that privacy. And then the last image shows the very backyard, where my neighbor, she had just replaced this part. This was a chain link, but she went with a different style than she already had. So it's just like there's just 3 different kinds of fences around, and I was hoping, if it would be a little bit taller, and then the spacing would be a little bit closer together with the 1-inch gaps between the pickets, that you just wouldn't see all that visual clutter. I'm an art teacher, and the visual is very important for me, and I'm just trying to make the house look nicer. So that's what I was hoping to get you to reconsider the design of it. And I do have at the bottom of my outline, if you have a copy of that, I already got estimates from Monco Fence. I know a couple of people that have used them, and they did a really nice job, and it was going to be around $4,000 for the 2 L shapes that I was talking about. And that's basically it, if you had any questions.
Thank you for the info. I only have one question. Do we have any opposition from the neighbors at all?
I've not heard any.
No? Okay.
I know that I showed the woman that's behind me, I showed her what I wanted, and she seemed to be okay with it, as long as she was just concerned if I was going close to the curb, because it would block her view coming out. But I'm about 30, I measured them about 30 feet back from the curb, so that should be fine. And the other neighbors seem to be fine with it as well.
Any other questions?
Well, no, Mr. Stripe, I live right around the corner, so I drive past your
okay.
home. I drive past your home, 2 or 3 times a day, and I see you out walking your child and your dog. So I know the house you've done a lot of improvements to the property and the lot since you bought it. So.
And I have a lot more plans, so.
Okay.
My father's a carpenter, so he's going to be helping me do a lot to the outside, so.
All right.
Thank you.
I know I've seen you fix up the property, so it looks great.
All right, thank you.
I just had a question that Mike can probably answer this. So technically, by code, the fence that she'd like to install on the right side of the house would be in compliance because it doesn't project into the
That's right.
front yard.
That's a side yard going from, facing the house from Midland and going to the right.
So it's really the 3rd Street side.
That's correct.
Which is technically considered your second front yard that poses the problem with the condition.
That's exactly right.
But yet it's still not, this fence is not protruding forward of the front face of her home.
No, I believe as Mrs. Stripe just mentioned, that it's 30 feet off the back of the sidewalk from the
From-
side. It's a considerable distance.
From the side of her house.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
from the street, yeah.
Okay. But
And then it'll be a foot back from the actual wall of the front of the house, if that is that what you were thinking?
yeah, just, some people will come in and want to not be on a corner lot and want to put a high fence like this technically in their front yard. So they're blocking, the front door,
right.
the front driveway, things like that. And
Right.
that's not the circumstance that
No.
you're proposing.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And the fence is 30 feet from the sidewalk, is that what you said?
Correct. Yeah, 30 feet.
On Midland?
Mhm.
I mean, on
Or no,
Third,
on
from
Third, right.
Right.
Okay, anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve a waiver for the fence requirement for 101 South Midland Avenue. Would anyone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
I have a second. Motion and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Any from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your fence. Thanks for coming out tonight. Item 4D is discussion and consideration of supplemental appropriation from the general fund for the acquisition of technology equipment, and I believe Mr. Roth is going to talk to us tonight about leasing as opposed to purchasing technology.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I composed a memo to the Township Manager that listed all of our Windows XP laptops and desktops. Obviously, Windows XP is no longer a supported platform. Some of these systems are anywhere from 4 to 6 or 7 years old. I did go out and get pricing. HP provides a lease purchase plan, 3-year lease purchase, dollar purchase. And I've itemized the cost there. There are 24 that I'm replacing. I've settled on a smaller mini desktop for the primarily most of them, but there are four laptops in there also. They also allow me to include installation and setup costs in the leasing, and that's included in the table in the back there. So this would bring all of our office computers up to a supported platform.
Thank you, Bill. And we had discussed that at budget time as a possibility also, so.
That's correct, yeah.
That's where we are now. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Is there a motion to allow for the supplemental appropriation from the general fund for the acquisition of technology equipment?
I would make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional questions or comments? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4E under new business, authorization to advertise the zoning text and zoning map amendments in IND, Industrial District Text Amendment, and PBO, changing that to R3 zoning map amendment. Mr. Rice.
What's in front of the board tonight are two separate ordinances. Mr. Canavan is here from WB Homes, I believe the equitable owner of a portion of the Superior 2
That is correct.
And I'll just, both of these ordinances have been through the planning commissions. There are two county review letters, one in September, one in December. There's a text amendment which would rezone, a text amendment which would permit townhomes in an I industrial district, which would be applicable to a portion of the Superior Tube site. The proposed text amendment would amend Section 14333 and provide for a series of, along with the use being permitted, provide for a series of dimensional criteria, performance standards. There's some architectural requirement, renderings and requirements for that, and it would be a use that would be permitted by conditional use. So that's the text amendment that is at this point before the board just for advertisement, and then there would be a public hearing. The second ordinance is a zoning map, a rezoning of two small parcels adjacent to the Superior Tube site. There's a parcel of about 4.5 acres, which is currently zoned PBO, and a smaller parcel, which is currently zoned VC, Village Commercial. The proposal from WB Homes is to rezone both of those properties to R3 for development, which would be a single-family detached dwelling development. So they're two separate ordinances. One's a text change, the other one is a zoning map change to an R3 residential district. Mr. Canavan, you want to maybe just, for the public's
Sure.
benefit, just describe what's being proposed here on both of these in terms of moving forward?
Absolutely. As I'm sure the board may or may not recall, I was here in November to discuss this application, and we'd had previous discussions with the Planning Commission prior to that meeting. We were proposing on the Superior Tube site, the plant is staying, still in operation, is not going anywhere. The tracts of ground we're talking about are the smaller tract of ground that Mr. Rice alluded to across Cross Keys Road from the existing plant, which is approximately 5.5 acres, and we're proposing to put 12 single-family homes similar to the adjacent R3 residential development behind it. That's the eastern tract that we've referred to. The western tract, which would be the larger tract, which is approximately 35 acres, is the industrially zoned tract that we are proposing to allow by conditional use in the industrial district townhomes. And we have a proposal, a proof of concept plan, if you will, that shows approximately 140 units on that site. That proposal obviously has to then go through and meet all the dimensional criteria and the architectural requirements that are laid out in the zoning ordinance that's before you this evening. When we were last in front of the board in November, it was the general consensus of the board that this was a favorable way to develop these sites, and the staff was directed to come up with the ordinances in which to effectuate how that could go about. And that's what's in front of you this evening. These ordinances were drafted up by the solicitor's office that would then allow these developments to move forward should the zoning be approved. So from my standpoint, we're coming to the beginning of the end of the process, the beginning of the process, where zoning would then possibly be allowed, and then we would have a probably lengthy land development and conditional use process so that the plan could be developed in accordance with what are the wishes of the township. The architectural controls are in place so you can end up with a product that you were looking for, and we have a lot of traffic discussions to have with your traffic engineer about placement of access and things along Germantown Pike, recognizing the existing conditions out there. The final piece we had discussed that this was an environmentally impacted site. We have received a approval from DEP of our remediation plan and cleanup plan for that site that would entail certain institutional controls on the site with regards to groundwater contamination, and those are the fact that you can't drill any additional wells on the site for any type of potable water use, along with vapor barriers and positive subslab depressurization units so that if there were any vapor buildups from groundwater contamination, they would be handled properly. In addition, there's a approximately 1.5 acre portion of the property to the rear of it that would be permanently stabilized with a 2-foot permanent cover that's provided within the remediation plan to handle the soil contamination that is on the site. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board has with regards to our proposal. I think the solicitor adequately went through the ordinance, and I won't bore you with any details on that.
Are there any questions from the board?
Chris, you were before the Planning Commission.
Correct.
Last Wednesday, I guess the 28th in January, and presented your plan, and I think it was the Planning Commission recommended that it be approved.
That is correct. It was the majority of the Planning Commission to move this forward based on these ordinances.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Canavan. Is there a motion to advertise the zoning text and zoning map amendments with industrial district text amendment and PBO to R3 zoning map amendment?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I would second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional questions or comments from the board? Any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask that all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Item 4F, authorization to prepare recreational facility ordinance. Mr. Rice, you're a busy man tonight.
Okay. Well, this is, at this point, just authorization to proceed to prepare a recreational facility ordinance. The township has had a couple proposals regarding the construction of outdoor fields, recreational facilities in the public facilities overlay zone. And currently in the overlay zone, there are recreational uses, there are not permitted recreational fields, active recreational fields, and this would be a text amendment that would permit that type of a field use in the public overlay zone. The ordinance would go through the Planning Commission process, the process that WB Homes just went through, took several months. So that's what's in front of the board tonight, authorization to prepare that ordinance. Staff's had some discussions about the contents of that, but essentially it would permit township, school district, and nonprofit organizations to own, operate recreational facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any comments from the board? Okay. Seeing no comments, is there a motion to authorize Mr. Rice to prepare a recreational facility ordinance?
I would make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional comments or questions from the board? Are there comments or questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our new business, and now we have 2 items of old business. Item 5A, discussion and consideration of preliminary final plan for S1402, Kimco 2600 Ridge Pike. Mr. Mrzinski, you're on for that one, and also I see Mr. Glazer in attendance as well this evening.
Yes, thank you. The Kimco folks, which own the property at Ridge and Eagle Stream, are back before us. They've been before you, I guess it was in January. There were some issues that were needed to be addressed in terms of buffering, some drafting, and I believe some legal descriptions on the roadways. And so basically it's the desire to take the property, divide it into 3, and at this point I believe most of the issues have been resolved, but I'd like the applicant to come forward and answer any questions about specifics.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Glazer, can you come up, please? I know there were some questions last time around, so maybe there are some updates this evening.
Yeah, last time I was in front of you, a lot of the conversations were focused around where we were with the Gennardi's box and the status of that. When I was here in front of you last time, we had a completed negotiated lease that we negotiated probably 4 or 5 months out to a tenant, fully negotiated. About 4 days ago, we were told they weren't signing it. They're just moving on to something else. We then followed up after 5-6 months of this process, and it's not the first time it's happened on this property, where he went out to a new LOI, which is a letter of intent to another user who was interested in the property. It's in front of them now. We're going to continue negotiating. We are continually working this site, trying to find occupants for that space and any potential uses for the new parcels that we're looking to create. So, wish I was going to come back here and had great news. It was executed, and I can tell you who it was, and we would move forward. But hopefully we could still move forward. But This property has been a challenge, and we continue working it. It's not like we're going away. We believe in it. We're going to keep out there marketing it, and I'll keep the board updated about the activity of the leasing that goes on there. And the other piece that was, I had Cornelius Brown from Bowler Engineering to meet with your engineer on site to review the fencing issues that everybody wanted to address and the landscaping, and I think we all came up to agreements about what areas were having what type of fencing, and I think the final conclusion that was being drafted up was that we were prepared to put a certain amount of money in escrow for some additional landscaping on our property for areas that after the fencing was completed, if we felt or you felt there was some voids that needed some additional screening, there was money allocated for that. I think it was allocated, I think, $6,000 or $7,000 of landscaping money. So those were the two big pieces that I remember from the last time.
I think also one of the concerns was that if the parcel, which is now under the control of one corporation, if it were to be divided.
Yes.
There are some concerns associated with that, so maybe you could address that as well, please.
Absolutely correct. And what I said last time and what we have said throughout this process, we will create a reciprocal easement agreement, which is an REA agreement, that the managing partner, which would be Kimco, if parcels were separated by ownership, you wouldn't at all ever visually see it, but we would be managing it and getting what we call common area maintenance charges from the other properties to make sure snow removal, landscaping, lighting, all of it is consistent. It wouldn't be breaking up the lighting into 3 different parcels. It wouldn't be breaking up into, if a landscape bay was half on one, half on the other. It would all be consistent. As I think I shared last time with everybody on the board, this is a very common thing in many of our shopping centers across the country, or even in Pennsylvania. You're on a lot of our properties, and nobody would ever know that there's 5 different owners that might have an Applebee's or a Walgreens, and there might be a Giant. They may be all be different properties, different owners, but it all looks as one cohesive shopping center. And that's our intent, and that's what the REA document that gets recorded and is our obligation then to be followed.
Thank you.
Well, we tried to get you a tenant, but maybe you can have some better success with them than what we did. Okay. We do have a business in the township that's growing exponentially, and they have parking problems.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be more than happy to try to have you talk to them.
I think
you think you're aware of him?
I think I'm aware of who it is, and their initial interest, as I understand it, if we're talking about the same, and we're not going to mention names here, their initial interest is to have a building that they can own outright before going into a potential leasing opportunity.
That sounds a lot like them.
So I think there's conversations. We're going to continue having that discussion. It would be a great use. We think it would be an absolutely great use. So we are in discussions with that player.
Okay.
So there is a resolution that's been prepared. I've provided it to council for Kimco, and this is a preliminary final subdivision plan. There's no new construction at this point. The overall parcel's being subdivided into 3 separate parcels, and the resolution that's in front of the board, I don't know if the board would want me to go through it, but I can do that quickly, just go through the conditions. It would grant the preliminary final subdivision plan of plans prepared by Bowler Engineering. They have a last revision dated December 11th, 2014. The conditions of the approval would be compliance with the Woodrow and Associates letter of December 29th, 2014. compliance with the Thomas Committa Associates letter of January 5th, 2014. Compliance with all other applicable ordinances and state and federal regulations. Number 4 would be execution of development financial security agreements, and that would include the escrow, $7,500 escrow.
Whatever the number was, everybody agreed to.
That is called out in paragraph 6 to deal with the rear landscape buffer. There's also payment of any applicable traffic impact or park and recreation fees. I think Mr. Woodrow recommended that tennis court screening would be...
Mr. Rice, as an option, whether the vinyl slats or the tennis court style screening, either one would be, I think, a good investment in privacy for those neighbors behind us.
That'll be worked out in the field.
I think so, yes.
And we agree with either alternative we'll work with.
And then number 7 is one Saldo waiver modification, and that is to showing 5-foot contours on the plan. That's the only waiver request on this. So that's what's in front of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Any comments from the board?
Sir, how many square feet is the Gennardi's, the old Gennardi's?
I think it's about, it's off the top of my head, I think it's close to 40,000 square feet.
So 40,000, and the self-storage is 100,000 square feet, give or take?
That is correct.
So you have 150,000 square feet of previously used retail space?
Yes.
Okay. And since you've gone to retail there and the supermarket has moved away, you've been unable to fill that 40,000 square feet of grocery store?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just curious, how does this proposal help the residents of Lower Providence, help the people of Lower Providence by putting commercial viable retail space back into 150,000 square feet of previously used retail space?
Okay. As we discussed last time, I will go through. First piece is the 100,000 square feet that is the former Kmart building. As I said then, I say now, that type of size retail, life this far into a community is almost impossible to actually get true retail interest. I'll be very happy when I have a strip retail and the anchor food player to be fully leased. I don't believe anytime in the near future there ever would be enough retail interest at that location of Ridge Pike for the 100,000 square feet, which was, when it was built 40 years ago, it was the place to be, having a Kmart, having that anchor. All the other places have outpositioned this piece of retail development. They want to be near the interchanges. They want to be in Collegeville. They'll never come back into that size box. And there aren't that many retailers, even if you break them up and you break it up into 4 junior anchor boxes of 25,000 square feet apiece. I don't see, there's no interest for that level. We are retail developers. All I ever want to do is put retailers in my centers. The last thing I ever want to do is to put $2.5 million into a self-storage. But I'd much rather make it look clean, usable, something for the community. But we will never see retail ever come back in a size of a center on Ridge Pike at that location for that much GLA. I do believe for the strip retail and the Gennardi's, we will keep banging away at it and find somebody for Gennardi's. So if you want to overlay it, I'm going to just be very honest with everybody. That self-storage component, which has really been very successful, more successful than we would have thought, and being used by the community, will never get used for retail, not because we want to keep self-storage there. There's just not a demand for retail at that location. As much as everybody likes to put master plans together and say, you know what, we deserve this, or we want this retailer, unless it hits all their little boxes, they have choices to go all over the country that are in better locations, better access, better road network, better proximity to population, demographics. We won't. But I do believe, being this far into the community, The strip retail and the food anchor can get leased up. So to address that, it's really almost impossible to ever believe that'll ever happen. Knowing that the self-storage is laid out where it's laid out, there's a tremendous amount unutilized land in front of the self-storage. We believe the best use is to bring, as I shared last time, maybe it's a medical office building, 2-story, right up onto Ridge Pike, having all that parking right behind it. You know, that self-storage only needs half a dozen parking spaces. But by allowing us to subdivide the parcel, one for the self-storage building, one for potentially a office building, we can go out there and market. As I said, some doctors, some hospital groups may say, you know what, I'd be interested. You know, having it subdivided allows us to get more flexibility. And then remaining all the retail to the left of the drive lane.
How does having it subdivided currently, as the zoning ordinance is, where you only have to allocate 10 parking spots to the self-storage, how does the fact that it would be subdivided assist you in building the building? I understand it would assist you in being able to sell each individual parcel out,
Right.
but how does it assist you in building? You could build the building right now as is, if you wanted to own it.
It's not our business. I needed to market the property. As we talked about a tenant, much rather own his property. If I have a series of doctors who want to have a medical building there, or a hospital group says, I want a hospital, if I already have it subdivided, it's much easier to have it done. It's nothing that's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody's going to see any change in the shopping center. It just gives us a better element to market the properties.
I know we've been around this before, but I think we've made it easier for you to have the self-storage in there forever, and that was a decision that a previous board made and that we reinforced by allowing the parking change. I just think by doing this, we will never, ever get viable commercial businesses back in there now that will help the residents of Lower Providence.
And I disagree that this will allow us to get better commercial properties. It may not be retail. It might be other commercial elements. But I don't want to rehash. I truly believe, with all respect here, that there was just too much retail. I've got lots of shopping centers that were built 40, 50 years ago. There's too much retail that was built then because other centers, other zoning, other planning, other townships approve things that outposition that piece of real estate. So you then have to become creative, and how do you redo it? And how do you maximize the best use of that land? This is just one piece of the puzzle to start. It allows us better marketing opportunities to go out there. You know, by you saying, well, you know what, bring it to us and then tell us what we could do for you. I would tell you, I've watched too many things go so far down the road. Time is our enemy. I would have thought 3 weeks ago, I sat in front of you, stood in front of you, and I was guaranteeing I was coming here to tell you who was going to sign up for the Gennardi box. This is the world we live in. And guess what? Time is our enemy. If I have it in place now, and I get hopefully the approval of the board, it allows me to do something different and something new. If you say, you know what, just come back, and when you have something may never come back. They'll go on to something else, other options. I'm trying to give ourselves all the flexibility we can to do the most marketing as I can with all the alternatives. It's not the greatest thing. I want retail. You know, there was a project we worked on. I would tell you I went for 3 years. We put in $20 million into a project. And the community said, I want a food store. There was a food store there for 25 years. I want a food store. No food store would ever go into this center ever again. They were outpositioned, and there were better road networks that people were going on. They didn't believe me. The county executive never believed me. I had the county executive sit down with all the national retailers, and even the small ones, and said, don't hear it from the developer. Hear it from the actual end user. He had it. He heard it. He goes, you know, Jeff, I get it now. I didn't get it before. I hear you. And I said, you got to let me do something different. And we put residential in the project. And it was just different. And still, there are people saying, you know, I really wish I had it. Why couldn't it? Because you don't put gates around your community. There's no fences. Everybody can go anywhere they want. People go up to Collegeville. It's a great shopping center. People go there.
You're right, we do not put fences around our community, but by putting unusable space, it forces people to go even further out. That's what we're doing here.
Well,
We're
I'm just
forcing
saying-
people to go even further away.
All I'm saying is, if the retailers were here, we would have been all over it, and we would have had them here. We have relationships with every retailer. We have 850 shopping centers across the country. We know the players. We're out there. And we're out there talking to all your local community players. We're out there talking to people that want to grow within your community. We're not stopping. We believe it's the right thing to do.
Anyone else? Okay, what's the will of the board? Is there a motion to proceed with preliminary final approval of the subdivision plan of Eagleville Plaza for a property located at the intersection of Ridge Pike and Eagle Stream Drive?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any additional questions or comments? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you
Motion
very-
carries.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you,
we're
Mr.
going to
Blazer.
keep trying. I mean, we're not giving up.
We look forward to that. Thank you. Item 5B under old business, approval amendment to trash and recycling contract. Mr. Rice, no pun intended. I think we need some cleanup of the trash contract.
You have in front of you a addendum to the December 29th agreement. The original agreement, which Ms. Gara signed and proffered to the township, neglected to include the charge for recyclable collection. So this adds that as an addendum to the original agreement. The pricing for the residential recycling, $107.28 per resident per year. So that is being added to that December 29th agreement, which the board previously approved.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
We thought we could get it for free, but Ms. Cara would not go along.
Valiant effort. Do I hear a motion to approve the amendment to the trash and recycling contract?
John, just to clarify, the ultimate price will be the same, we're just cleaning up the language in the contract, correct?
Yes, yeah. I mean, the bid that was awarded included the recycling number. It just, when Mascara did the contract, submitted to the township, they didn't pick up on it, we didn't pick up on it, it was not included in there. But this is what was awarded on the bid.
Okay.
Yeah. That hasn't changed.
Other questions? Go ahead. Supervisor Ekman picked up on that. Well done.
I would make your motion to
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the audience? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No, just for the same reason that I was opposed to the original agreement. I would have preferred the lesser 3-year agreement for, I guess it was $313 a year. Thank you.
Well, as we're just voting on the amendment to this agreement, I still vote aye.
You voted, I'm sorry?
I vote aye.
Aye, okay.
We're amending
Motion
the
carries.
agreement that's already been.
Okay, some announcements. Sewer Authority meeting is coming up on February 11th at 7:30. We had the library meeting on February 16th at 7. Parks and Rec will meet on the 17th at 7. Planning Commission on the 25th at 7, and the Zoning Hearing Board on the 26th at 7. Mike, any information on the agendas for those two meetings this month?
Just briefly, the Planning Commission, there was a minor lot line plan that had previously been on the January Planning Commission agenda, but because they needed a little bit more time, is coming forth in February. That's the Sycamore Farms one. It's just a minor lot line. Then for the zoning hearing board, there's one hearing that is kind of coming back up again. It's for a proposed cell tower on Level Road. This was something that had been put on hold for a period of time while some other alternatives were considered, and now the applicant is back and has reactivated the hearing.
Thank you very much, Mike. I believe we have a report from our student representative, Haley O'Donnell, tonight. Haley? No? Oh, I thought you said you had a report tonight.
I can. So the Fact and Minithon is having a fundraiser at PJ Wellahan's next Thursday at 12. And 15% of your bill will go to the Four Diamonds Fund and the goal of $30,000.
Very nice. Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, just a reminder to our residents that we have some more inclement weather forecast for the end of the weekend. As a reminder, if you have a fire hydrant on your property or near your property and would be willing to help us out by digging it out, we would very much appreciate that. Any other comments from the board?
I just had one. The Business Development Committee, Supervisor Zimmerman and I met last week, and we're working on some projects for this year. A business development roundtable. It's in its
Yes.
infancy stage, and maybe Bill, if you have notes, if you want to.
Actually, with Denise being out there, don't have notes, but just from memory, we came up with an idea of business roundtable discussion, inviting property owners, brokers, business owners to come in and have an open discussion as to what their needs are, what the problems that they see, and we're trying to define exactly how that would go and who would be invited in the time frame. Right now, we're looking at possibly a spring event, and having it right here at the Township Building. So it's something that we're trying to formulate. We did meet, that was January 29th. We're planning on meeting February 24th again, the Business Development Committee, to discuss that and hash around some more ideas on that.
And we've also compiled a list, basically a top 10 list of properties that we're really focusing on to fill spaces. These would be empty businesses that we're looking for new businesses to relocate to.
And we've actually also posted them on the Business Development, webpage. So we've compiled a list of we've separated them into commercial and retail locations that are available, and where their broker does have a listing for the location, we make it an easy access to take a look at it. I think there was a total of approximately 21 locations that we kind of pared down. Rich and I went through and prioritized them, whether you can really prioritize an empty location. But yeah, just so we can focus some resources on them. But these are the ones that are some of the ones that we've discussed and are available. So those kind of discussions came out of our Business Development Committee as to how can we maybe put a foot forward and let the community know what's available.
Excellent. And that's active and live on the website now?
That's active and live on the website. You get there from the Business Development page.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah. And I'll continue to maintain this. Some of the sites are going to be really tough, even tougher than maybe the Kimco site. And they obviously don't have brokers or current listings, but they are still out there and available for an opportunity. So.
You also have another new feature on the website.
Yes.
Since you have it up.
We did put a calendar up. We have all the township meetings posted here on the calendar. And so it's a one-stop shop. You don't have to kind of look and see, is it the third Wednesday or the fourth Wednesday? So we've got the Board of Supervisors, Planning Commission, Zoning Hearing Board, the Sewer Authority, and the library all up on this one single calendar.
That's great, Bill. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from staff?
I'll give an
Okay.
Give an update. The Planning Commission met on Wednesday, the 28th. There were 2 items on the agenda. Jill and I were in attendance. The first was WB Homes, as you saw earlier tonight, for the zoning text amendments. The other one was the Taco Bell plan for the property at Audubon and Trooper Road in the former Texaco gas station, I guess, which is now the Goodwill drop-off or the Go Green drop-off. They submitted plans which were approved by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval, so they should be up in front of us shortly.
Very good. Thank you very much. Comments from the staff? Okay,
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, we've got an Arcola Bridge update.
Very good. Arcola
Yeah.
Bridge update.
They put in a temporary stone access road off of Cider Mill Road. They also began the placement of large rocks, pipes, and concrete barriers to create a causeway into the creek in order to access the bridge piers. They expect in February to complete the installation of that causeway and to begin demolition of the superstructure of the existing bridge. And they expect to have that completed by the end of February. However, the existing piers will take a little longer to demolish.
Thank you, Rich. I know there was some consternation at the last meeting about the seeming lack of progress, so we will continue to stay on that and keep everyone in the township aware of the progress that is being made. Mike?
Just in brief, my apologies to the township residents and property owners in the sense that the community development department has been pretty much decimated by illness recently. We've been almost totally eliminated from any in-house staff, so we are hoping to get some folks back soon, and we'll do our best, but we appreciate your patience.
Duly noted, and we hope that everyone is feeling better very soon and that it stops spreading.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Okay. Courtesy of the floor, would anyone like to make a comment? Seeing none, I'll end by saying that our next meeting is scheduled for February 19th, and we'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Have a good evening.